Welcome. You're on the Fringe Show. I'm your host, Tatiana Zalan, and I go live every Friday at 2 p.m. Dubai time. The Fringe helps you to understand and navigate the rapidly changing world and increase the odds of your success. Here we discuss technology, startups, entrepreneurs, and mental models of successful people so that you too can take advantage of the opportunities in the new digital world. Today is episode number 35, and I decided to dedicate it to the Bored Apes phenomenon. It's a very successful NFT project. The Bored Apes have become somewhat of a flashpoint of both excitement and skepticism about NFTs. Advocates suggest that it will revolutionize art and commerce by creating a level playing field without race and gender issues. And detractors are saying that we're in speculative bubble and at best, and probably even a scam at worst. But what I want to focus on today are what explains the project's success. Why are the Bored Apes so valuable? We'll discuss their valuation as well. And what can collectors, artists, and startup founders learn from the Bored Apes Yacht Club? That's the project, the full name of the project. And to me, there are at least three lessons that can be drawn. The first one is how do you create a cult brand? And this is what exactly is driving the valuation of the project. Second is the community. How do we create a vibrant community? What kind of utility do we give to a token? And finally, there is an aspect of licensing, and that's a big part of their success. It's very underrated, and it's not very well explained, not very well understood. So I will be focusing on that too. Let me remind you, it's a live show, so please allow Facebook to identify you. A usual disclaimer, well, it's not financial or investment advice, nor legal advice, and all that I'm doing on the Fringe Show is for informational and educational purposes only. I'll start with a little bit of background so that you understand what the project is about, and then we will move on into the discussion of these lessons that we, as collectors, as startup founders, can learn from the Bored Apes. Well, the Bored Apes Yacht Club is a significant, sort of relatively young project. It began in April 2021 by Yuga Labs. That's the company that runs the project. And although it experienced a very slow start, the project exploded in value over the following months. They initially invested something in the vicinity of $40,000 to produce the whole project, and most of it went to the illustrators. The Bored Apes is actually a collection of 10,000 NFTs. It's a limited supply of NFTs, and they house cartoon primates and unlock the virtual world that they live in. The founders of the project, and their names are now known, Solano and Aronov. They were interested in crypto, were inspired by all these communities of crypto lovers that blossomed on platforms like Twitter in recent years, and people with this one niche interest craved some sort of a destination where they can gather and discuss their blockchain-related developments. So why don't we give NFTs an official home, an official name? And this is how exactly the Bored Ape Yacht Club was born. The founders came up with the concept of rich apes living in a swamp clubhouse. They hired a freelance illustrator to draw the apes and partnered with two other engineers as co-founders to execute the collection. Each Bored Ape is distinctly different and was generated from over 170 traits, or in other words, 170 drawings. They represent grungy apes with unimpressive expressions on their faces and human clothes on sometimes multicolored, sometimes metal bodies. Most of the apes look like characters one might see in a comic. Some are smoking, some are having pizza hanging from their lips, and others don leather jacket and grills and so on. Within less than a year, this NFT collection has totaled probably well over 1 billion in sales, and it made it one of the most valuable NFT collections in the entire space, in the entire universe of NFTs. It's perhaps rivaled only by the Larva Labs CryptoPunks NFTs, and we'll mention that name again. It's currently valued north of $4 billion and probably even more, according to some of the latest information. At the beginning, they were not that valuable. Each ape probably cost around $300 a pop, and now the base price tag to acquire just one is over $250,000. It recently surpassed competitors to become the most expensive NFT collection. They're also engaged in auctions. In summer 2021, for example, there was an auction, and over 100 NFTs were minted, resold at Sotheby's. Then competitor Christie's followed suit very, very shortly thereafter. And around the same time, one collector bought a single token directly from OpenSea for almost $3 million. So clearly very successful, very popular, and very valuable. Some of the two other recent developments include here an acquisition. In early March, this month, 2022, they acquired the highly valued CryptoPunks and Meatbits NFT collections from Larva Labs. The details of these transactions are not clear, but it's probably went for a fairly significant amount of money. What they also did, they launched ApeCoin, and so they looking towards the future and detailing a new partnership for a play-to-earn gaming title built around this much-hyped token called ApeCoin. Given regulatory scrutiny, the SEC regulators are very concerned about whether a token is security, utility, or what is it. They're aware of that. So Yuga Labs has been very careful to isolate itself publicly from this token's launch. So it's quite different from the actual collection. It's a token, almost like a governance token that they use. The token will be released by an entity called ApeCoin DAO, decentralized autonomous organization. It's made up of council members. They're connected to the NFT project, but none of them are the employees or executives at Yuga Labs. Token holders will be able to vote on decisions which relate to the collections and to the DAO regulation, generally speaking, and the special council will carry out all sorts of decisions on the community. In terms of what the token can actually do, the full scope is unclear, but it is apparent that ApeCoin will be used as game currency, or rather in-game currency, for some titles that Yuga Labs have been working on for quite some time now. Now, talking about the Bored Apes Yacht Club, I need to mention a couple of controversies around them. And one occurred early this year and sparkled a huge debate in the NFT community. An investigative reporter from BuzzFeed News revealed the identities of the two founders, and that spurred a furious internet debate about pseudonymity in business generally and in Web3 in particular. In this report, the two co-founders who operated online under the names of Gordon Goner and Gargamel were exposed as the brain behind the project, and the two other their names were Greg Solano and Wiley Aronoff, so they are now known. The identities of the other two co-founders are not known. They remain anonymous. These are the pair of engineers who go under the names of Emperor Tomato Ketchup and No Sass. They are unknown. And at the heart of the row, you may ask, well, what's the big deal? They became known. Well, at the heart of the row is the question of whether or not the owners of highly profitable businesses have a responsibility to make their identities known, as is the legal obligation of executives in top publicly traded companies. Of course, Yuga Labs is not a publicly traded company, it's a private company. The debate essentially boils down to two arguments. Some would argue that such transparency is absolutely vital to maintaining ethical business practices, but many others in the crypto space would argue, well, it will upset the democratic foundation of Web3, resulting in or rather resting on the principle of anonymity. So these are the two debates that are currently going on in the space of Web3. Should we be pseudonymous or not? Should founders be pseudonymous or not? And it's not uncommon that in many projects, some of the founders are indeed anonymous. And the second controversy, which I will not go into in a lot of detail, is that the project has been accused of as being racist and full of Nazi symbolism. And I'm referring in particular to some study done by a gentleman by the name of Ryder Rips. He has got a degree in media studies, has been studying media and design and internet cultures for 15 years. He published an article called Bored Apes Yacht Club is Racist and Contains Nazi Dog Whistles. And he concludes this article with one particular phrase in one of the last pages. Let me just find it out. Why does it matter? Why does the symbolism matter? To me, he says, it's a terrible example to other creators setting a bad tone for future generations of art. And so I won't go into it. It's up to you to decide whether it's racist or Nazist or not. But if it is, they're probably on the wrong side of history. This is all that I can say. Now, on a more positive note, what are some of the lessons that we can learn from the Bored Apes? The first one is about cult brands. And how do we value? Let's start with that. How do we value brands? What is the value beneath any object of crypto art or crypto collectible? There are many components of value, and I talk about that in a lot of detail in one of my shows where I talk and discuss the valuation of crypto art, but let's just focus on economic value of brands, and it includes market and non-market value. The market value would be the artists or something related to the artist, like, for example, his or her fame. Some of it is art related, whether art is authentic. What about its provenance, uniqueness and rarity, liquidity, speculative value? Is it driven by fashion or novelty? What about its aesthetic value? And the third element is community related. It's around legitimacy and social consensus. So that's kind of the market value. But also there is an element of non-market value, which we can see in phenomena like conspicuous consumption or bragging rights or joint enjoyment, when people get together to talk about things that interest them a lot, like investments or investments in NFTs in our case. And another element is mimetic desire. People try to imitate other people. Even if they don't know why they want certain things, they will want them because just simply other people have it. So that's kind of what value in crypto collectibles and crypto art is from the economic point of side of it. This project in particular has generated really a cult-like following, and it's a very strong moat even through bear markets. This is why we need to study it in depth if we want to understand how to survive bear markets. Firstly, there is limited supply. There are only 10,000 of them, and it's manufactured scarcity. It's not genuine scarcity, of course, but and it's clearly scarce. It's also rare in terms of its styling aspects, and that feeds into the pricing of the NFT. Each ape representing NFT gives an individual access to community of like-minded people, so they can enjoy their own kind of group of people, their own tribe. They can talk about their investments. Also, exclusive merchandise is available to ape holders, such as limited edition hoodies, as well as t-shirts. Pricing is pretty much like we see in pricing of luxury goods. Price is part of the value proposition. It's like fine wine. It's like your Gucci bag. And in economics and strategy, we typically refer to that as Veblen goods. And a Veblen good is a type of a luxury good for which demand for a good increases as the price increase. And it's apparently in contradiction to the law of demand. What we see with Bored Apes, with luxury goods, is an upward sloping demand curve. The pricier it is, the more people want it. Then, of course, there is also a component of identity and signaling, particularly status signaling. Many users on social media have started to change their profile, and now the profile picture is the Bored Ape. Users, especially on Twitter, began doing this in big numbers. These type of cult brands, and Bored Apes are no exceptions, are typically supported by heavy influencers, and they're heavily promoted by celebrities. In our case, like Serena Williams and Paris Hilton, Jimmy Fallon, and Logan Paul, and even Justin Bieber. They all have showed their way, or found their way into the club, so to speak. And apart from that, they also have serious investor support, the Bored Apes Yacht Club. Now, brand strength is critical to long-term success. They seem to have an authentic brand story, and also kind of a story and authentic brand, and all that is resonating with its audience. Now, let's move on to a second component of their success, and that's community and utility. They cleverly combine the collectible art component with community membership and gamification. You're starting with utility. Virtual art is clearly very enticing. The collection is highly desirable, but many collections don't have this utility. You need to do something with an NFT, and this is clearly the problem that was solved by Yuga Labs. They're always looking for more ways of building value by building even more doors that the tokens can unlock. They recently, for example, surprised collectors with a treasure hunt, and the winner received 5 ETH as a prize. And at the time, it was something around $16,000. So it's pretty significant price, and another ape. So that's really very good price for those of you who are part of this community. What else do? They do, or started doing rather, it's a new project, an annual event. In October last year, they announced their first Ape Fest. That runs about 1 week and includes in-person gallery party, yacht party, warehouse party, merch pop-up, and charity dinner in New York. They're currently discussing various partnerships ideas with multiple musicians, music acts, and some media studios, but the details of that are not very well revealed. They're looking at interoperability in the metaverse. Further down the line, the founders see a future of interoperability so that the collectors can upload their apes into various corners of the metaverse. Hypothetically speaking, or you can take one ape, it could appear inside a popular video game such as Fortnite, and the user could dress the avatar in digital versions of Bored Ape Yacht Club merch, for example. That could happen. And finally, what's very interesting is that we see a very different user behavior in the Bored Ape community, and it's holding, it's not trading NFTs. Community-related NFTs will behave differently as individuals don't see them as a tradable asset. And NFTs like the Bored Apes, will give access to communities, and they trade more like real estate and not like financial assets. This is clearly the case with Bored Apes. People just love it, they hold on to them, they don't trade them as often. And coming now to the third component, and that's licensing. They've done something really clever with their licensing, and other startup projects will really need probably to pay attention to that. Let me start with the traditional model of licensing. And here I'm drawing on research by Professor Edward Lee, who is a legal scholar, and he actually dissected the model, the licensing model of Bored Apes, and compared it to the traditional model. So the traditional model is the so-called spoke and hub collaboration model, and it's centralized collaboration, which defines commercial use of IP and tight control of intellectual property. If we take Walt Disney as an example, they have protected their famous Mickey Mouse character as its crown jewel and has licensed commercial uses of Mickey to other famous brands. They include Lacoste and Rag & Bone, Forever 21, Marc Jacobs, Lego, and so on and so forth. When you're buying an NFT, what are you actually buying and what are you selling? Under a traditional licensing model, you're buying NFT means you're buying a virtual token on blockchain, nothing else. The token is very different from the art and content. A sale of NFT typically comes with a content license, allowing the buyer, you maybe, to make some sort of use of the art or content. Often, such licenses do not allow buyers to make any commercial uses, much less to create derivative works of the underlying art or content. The NFT producer or NFT marketplace provides the content license to the buyer during the sale, for example, by providing a link to terms and conditions governing the sale. Sometimes the marketplace, like OpenSea, like Rarible, will use a standard license for all sales on this platform. Now, what about the Bored Apes licensing model? It's very different. They adopted the decentralized collaboration model. What does it mean? Well, under the decentralized collaboration model, the IP owner allows consumers to make derivative works of the business IP and permits consumers to monetize the IP. The IP owner sells NFTs stored on blockchain that comes with a license, allowing buyers to make derivative works and commercial uses of the IP associated with the NFT. And as a result, the IP owner will relinquish creative control over the development of derivative works of its IP to the buyers of the NFT. Such secondary uses and derivative works do not require any approval of the IP owner. It is all decentralized. The Bored Ape license does precisely that. It grants buyers of its NFTs a broad right to make commercial uses of the Bored Ape character associated with the NFT purchase. The Bored Ape grants an unlimited worldwide license to use, copy, and display the purchased art for the purpose of creating derivative works based upon the art. And this type of license, it's important to emphasize, is highly unusual in the NFT space. And it's probably one of the reasons why this project has become so successful, although it's not very well understood and underrated as a reason. So how do they make money? The Bored Apes themselves make money not just from the initial sale, but of its NFT apes, but also from 2.5% royalties on future trades. It has real-world licensing deals with the likes of Adidas and was involved recently in a concert with Chris Rock's and the Strokes. Jimmy McNeil's, the owner for Bored Ape NFTs, signed the music deal with them, with a Universal Music's group label, and to create a music band called Kingship. The Yuga Labs creators themselves have created derivative works, including pets for the Bored Apes and another collection that is called of NFTs called Mutant Ape Yacht Club. So that's another variation of that. There are, of course, advantages and risks of this model. This decentralized collaboration business model enables a startup or business to launch a new creative ecosystem that gives rise to collaborations organically from the bottom up without the transaction costs of lawyers and conducting negotiations of content licenses. One potential advantage of the Bored Apes model is that it unleashes 10,000 NFT owners to monetize the Bored Apes. And because of the high prices for Bored Apes NFTs, we can speculate that probably some of the owners are quite successful in their respective fields. Risks, of course, they do exist because, of course, this model requires a business to relinquish creative control over its IP, and that creates risks. But they were willing to accept this risk. Well, now some parting thoughts. We've talked about 3 lessons that we can learn as startup founders, as NFT collectors from this brand, from this popular NFT collection, the Bored Apes. It's how do you create the cult brand? How do you create community? How do you create utility for the token? And also we discussed licensing conditions, and these make Bored Apes NFTs really, really valuable, which was kind of the topic of this podcast and the show. Well, what makes it valuable? These 3 things. For collectors, maybe the best path to take it is not to maybe look for NFTs that can give you the highest return, but rather to spot those communities that are worth paying for access to and with NFTs that have utility. For entrepreneurs, it's a great example of how to create a cult brand and community around it. And we also need to pay attention to the licensing model, which is very favorable to collectors and buyers, and that underlies their success as well. Well, this is it for today. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for sharing my enthusiasm for NFT, although not necessarily for the Bored Apes collection, but I think they've done some things really, really right, and we can all learn from them. Thank you for joining, and again, I will see you next Friday at 2 p.m. Dubai time. And now it's time for some music.